welcome. We're going to talk about ambience. Um, Ambience, I name everything ambience that is, kind of in the background. It plays when nothing else is really playing, but it's not up front. But it really gives you a feeling. So if the kick and bass are the floor of a room, the snare and percussion are the walls and the ceiling, and basically, make the room a room. Then I would say the ambience is the color of the walls and, um, you know, what kind of carpet or floor there's in there. So it gives the feeling of the room, but it might not be the first thing you look at. I would say the leads would be the furniture in the room, and the effects would be the little details. So it's like maybe some flowers on the table or something like that. So the ambience, even though it immediately gives you a feeling of a room, it might not be the most present, sort of say. But I mean, if it's going to be a bright red room, it definitely will be very present. And the same with this. If it falls away, a lot falls away. So let's take a listen to think about it. As you can hear, it's quite subtle. I think the Kai, as I called it, actually could be classified as a an effects because it's this one. So it's normally what you would call a stab, just a very plucky one hit and then it fades out again. So I'm gonna basically put this in the effects because all the little hits and effects and other thingies I like to have there to keep it nice and organized. So alright, the rest, let's give it all this nice sand color. Um, with some of these, I think I cheated. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I used presets for the cat, for example, and I think I did this because I came home from work and was pretty tired and wanted to make a track that evening. And if I'm gonna start messing around with Zebra without any really reference, I'll either come up with the things that I always make, so pretty standard stuff, which normally will be like the meow kind of sounds, or I'll be playing with it all evening and then in the end make something that will not work in the track, but hey, it sounds pretty cool. So I used, I think, one of the patches Howard Scar. It's also the dude that works with Hans Zimmer. I think Hans Zimmer uses his presets, and the guy works for Virus and many things. This guy dedicates his life to making presets. Well, I'm confident he will make things better than I do. But one thing you need to keep in mind is that normally they make these things to be impressive, so they'll be over complete. They'll, not be part of a song or anything, but just to impress you just by itself. So there will be bass and high tones and all kinds of things going on, and normally that's way too much for your track, what it needs. So that's a danger. But they can be very interesting. And if you know how a synth works, then you can create really interesting things from just presets and use that basically as the already much more advanced initialized preset, you know, and start from there. As I think I did here, I think that FM I threw in, I added another channel, so without it, it sounds. Let me solo. Yeah, solo. just very whiny sound. And then the other one, it's actually just a transient of it, and kind of much more in the back. So actually, the main one, it's very simple, just an oscillator with a lot of oscillators, so it sounds very wide. And I put this filter in there, and I think it's a sort of comp filter. Yeah, it does all kinds of crazy stuff. I couldn't honestly tell you. It's been a while since I read the manual, but it does cool stuff. So just, go ahead and turn some knobs, and I got this out of it. It's really not very special without the filter. Quite distorted, I think, without. Actually, it's first going for some strings, so I wanted to add the shimmer. With this, it just becomes this crazy string-like instrument. It's a great plugin, and yeah, you can make it from quite subtle to almost something you wouldn't recognize as the initial sound. But then I, for some reason, kept it. Now, if I would go into all the details of this synth, I'll probably leave that for another video, because Zebra is so extensive and so in depth. So, as I say, just take a plugin, read the manual of this thing, and just, mess around with filters. Add a little bit of low filtering, all that stuff. Again, I don't need. Probably put another one there just as a safeguard. Or there. I don't need anything really underneath. 100 from this synth. Some distortion to make it a bit more interesting. Some delay. All these I want in the back. So one way of putting things in the back is using reverb, delay, because it blurs the sound. It makes it a bit more mushy, a bit more vague. So this is great for putting it in the back. One of the things you also could use is a reverb to widen the sound, as would happen with this one. Now, Valhalla is a bit of my go-to reverb. With this, we want it to work from the moment it starts. But if you have, for example, a percussive element, you want those first 100 milliseconds to be dry, and then, the sound comes. You can also make a send channel so that the original sound stays present, but seeing with this, we actually want it to be vaguer and more in the background. I'm just throwing it in directly because we're gonna push it back now. I want the actual reverb. This is the dampening of the reverb itself. I want it to be reduced by 13 dB after 6000 hertz. And the lows, I don't want it to reverberate the low frequencies at all, so I'm gonna put it at the minimum. I like this old one. The other one is a bit more cleaner, high frequencies, but I like it when it's a bit blurry, especially for this use. The decay can be quite long. Again, this will mushen up the sound. If you want it to be just more a natural sound of reverberation, just a little touch of it to like a vocal sample or something, I would put it quite low and on the mix quite low. But here you don't have to worry too much. Actually, it will sound cool because it's made to be like a string sort of. So that's that for the cat. The tremolo string. Tremolo is basically when instead of something being it goes I can't do it, but the volume goes up and down and up and down. So let's have a listen. Oh, that's the cat again. hear that? Lounge lizard. It's great for organ sounds. It's great for kind of, those old keyboard kind of funky digital piano kind of sounding things. It's kind of my main go-to, even though I'm very bad at making funky melodies. That would great. This would be perfect for that, but yeah, not doing that today. Again, the low. You don't want to cut off everything. Um, you just want it to be adequate with the bass. You don't want any sub really, but the higher, well, not really bass areas, but the low mid, you kind of want it to be present there. Because if you're gonna cut all that away constantly, then the problem is your bass will end here, go down, down, down. Maybe you have a little up and then goes down. Your hats will be high, go down, 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 and then drop off. And then your melodies will be sitting somewhere here. And then everything kind of drops off here. And then you have all of a sudden a gap there. And it just doesn't feel like a full, really normal song. You're just missing something. And that's what happens there. And that was for me a personal problem that after a few years I discovered I always do this. I always cut things off around 300, and then with the bass it will kind of dip around 300, and it basically all came together, and the 200 to 500 would always have a dip, and it just didn't really sound like a full song all the time. So I started being more careful, rounding it off a little bit lower. I noticed you can get away with quite a lot if you make sure that your volume is appropriate to the things that do have it. And you don't always have to cut it. If it's too present, you can, use this, just a band, or you can roll it off like this. And in that way, you keep those frequencies. You just, give a bit more space for the rest, without really just clinically destroying your sound. Now, I put it completely to the sides, this sound, because I really wanted to fill up the room. As I, told you about that room, I really wanted to fill up with warmth. So, let me go back to the ambience. You see, it really center, sides. It just has one purpose basically, and that's filling up the very extremes outside, and then together it all basically has a bit of space. The cat one is a bit more centered, this one is a bit more on the sides, and then it kind of fills up all those frequencies that either I didn't cover with the rest of the instruments, or just because I like the color of them, to support the rest of it. As you can see, it's present more in that region I was talking about that had a problem, and then those higher frequencies that most likely is the distortion from the cat. Now that might pose a problem later, because I don't want it to conflict at all with the rest. So I don't want it to cut it too low. See, I already did that out of instinct, just put it somewhere here. That's too low. I'm gonna mess up those carefully set lower parts of it. So let me go into the cut, and then you can see it's quite high. So what we're gonna do is reduce just the highest, and then this just lower it. We don't want to cut it completely. We want it to be there, just not overpowering. So, and then we have probably another one with reduction. This one is a copy of the cat. I just lowered it by an octave, and the rhythm, it's nothing special. The same with the cat. The cat has some kind of glide to it, so it goes and kind of does something like that. Now in Zebra, sorry, I'm going back and forth, but kind of forgot this to mention this. Here you can see it set it instead of polyphonic, so you can play a chord. You can put it either to trigger. I'm not gonna go into every one, but legato is that it goes. You can do the bendy or sliding notes that it goes instead of. Now you can set that by the amount of glide, and then you get that. You hear that? That. Now the other one is just very simple. You can probably just drag this out, and I think it will be fine. And then again, make sure that the low or the very lows are not coming through. Reduce that high end a bit, so just to control it. Those very high ones, just reduce it, because basically they're gonna make it a bit too piercing and unpleasant to listen to. Now some ping pong, and I already reduced those highs actually with a auto filter, but another way to do that is with the EQ, as we just did. And you can see again, I tried the Valhalla shimmer. I found it a bit too much, but I kept it on there because probably when I'm gonna make an introduction or a breakdown, I might put it all the way up and then record it, and then kind of create this ambience in the back while some breakdown or build up is happening. So that's that. Let's hear it with the shimmer. See, push it back much more. And then another one, which is a simple operator. Kind of sounds like a chord. Not sure. Yeah, it is a chord actually. So, again, it's an inverted chord, I think. So it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, and then almost an octave lower. As you can see here, it is an octave lower. Inverted chord is rather than you have the root key and then one above it, one above. Instead of that, you do it the other way around. You do them below and then below. You can do that with the fifth or the seventh, and that creates another funky bed. Basically, I can up it one octave, and it should, in theory, still sound fine. See? So I might even do that later if I want, or maybe not. It's a simple saw wave. It's really nothing too special here. This is also standard. Rolled it off. Some side chain because it's a constant going on. I wanted to kind of duck down when the kick hits. Shimmer again. Shimmer works great for pads and making everything sound very lush and full in the background, but don't really use it on leads because you could, but then you need to use it as a send channel or put it in a group and have the dry channel also play through, because else it will push your carefully positioned lead all the way in the back and it will just drown in it. I have some transient thing on it, so the filter starts higher and goes down, and then it just holds it at around the 1500 hertz. Sorry, 1500 hertz spread out. The spread is not great on the operator, but it's not bad enough to not use it. So in this case, I just took a lazy route. Maybe I'll go back later to see if I can thicken it up, but because it's so in the back, it doesn't really have a priority. Now I made a little bit of an LFO movement on it, so I'll put it all the way up to so you can hear it. Turn this off so it's more present. Now it's not synced, so It just moves, and it just creates a bit more of an organic feel to it. And then every time a new chord starts, the filter opens up a bit, goes back, and then it keeps moving with this. Um, it doesn't become too boring because it basically is dun, dun, and rather than just having dun, it starts you know, just a bit of these variations will sweeten up the sound. This thing does pretty much the same, just sweetening up. It's a great plugin. All the plugins from Valhalla are great. See, also widened it. Width is all the way up. Might be a bit too much actually, to be honest. Because I don't want it to really, you don't want it to be overpowered by the rest. And I put this on, and that was because for when the leads are playing, just for the example, if I would have it on, it would overtake the leads. But for example, when the leads are not playing, the song is just starting or fading away, I might bring this one in so that it kind of nicely fills in the gap that the leads leave without being overpowering. So again, everything together. And then here. You see, it's quite a rich one in terms of how present it is. It's also, I think, quite loud to the rest. As you can see, 30 minus 33, minus 48, minus 34. This is much softer than the rest. The rest is, well, this one is quite soft, but for example, the kick and bass are minus 10, the percussion is minus 15. So these are almost twice or three times as soft as the rest, as the loudest parts. So it's very much in the background. These ones even more. So you could like lower this one, but the idea probably what I had is that, as I said, I want to use this one to fill up that intro and that breakdown, maybe areas like that where it's a bit slowing down. And you could do another thing. You could put an LFO on that. Just again, more movement, and especially with these strings, you can get away with a lot, and it just makes it more moving. You want to move away a bit. My shimmer is going wild. That's the reason why I put it off. It has a feedback loop. You can probably fix it somewhere. Probably you can fix it by turning down the mix as well, but for now it's not important. So that kind of one was the ambience. Now I want you to hear it with or without it. We're gonna first do it without it, and then you kind of get the idea what it adds. Quite empty, could be nice, but you want to spice it up a bit. So that's mostly the reason why I do it. It really is something you could also replace with, extensive effects, or just leads that are covering a very wide spectrum. But in this case, I think the leads are a bit more limited. Let's turn this off. Let's take a look at the spectrum, and you can see they're mostly here present. The leads cut this out for the heads, and then here I kind of naturally cut this off now. If you have leads that go all the way down to like say 80 to 60, that really pack more punch, which I probably should try to with these leads. I'm now filling that up with this ambience, and if the ambience drops away, you kind of want these leads to also have that bottom. I'll still just not fill up enough for it to really, be a full spectrum song. And in general, you do with everything want it to be covering all the way from around 20 to 30 hertz all the way up to high. Most people can't hear past somewhere between 15 to 20k. So this is not super important, but there needs to be something there. So if we take a look, you can see there's still a little dip here. So you could even fill this up, but a little bit of a dip, that doesn't matter, because this is also a very boomy area. But basically, as I said, from 20 all the way to here, you kind of wanted to fill it with this point, and somewhere around here being the loudest. Now this little thing, I probably either before the mixing stage or in a worst case scenario, I would try to find where this one is, and perhaps reduce this with a linear phase, EQ, something like that, that it's very non-invasive, and just push it back a bit to here, that it's not so. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but if it's too you have some of those overtones sometimes, or those fundamentals that are just so piercing, you can try to reduce the sound, but that will normally make it unbalanced, because then maybe the harmonics, say these are the harmonics, I don't know if these are the harmonics, but they might be so soft that they fall away, changes the sound, and that you don't want. So I normally would reduce this one a bit. So that's a bit for mixing, but I'm gonna go into detail into that much later. So that's this about ambience. I heard. I hope you learned something, and I would say hope to see you in the next video.